Bumblebee is the latest in the Transformers franchise, and for the first time not directed by Michael Bay. Instead, this movie is directed by Travis Knight, who gave us the excellent animated film Kubo and the Two Strings, which is a movie that I just absolutely adore. Now, as with many other people, I was fairly done with the Transformers movies in the hands of Michael Bay. I admittedly still enjoy the first movie from 2007, but the rest are pretty bad, especially the Mark Wahlberg ones. So a lot of us were hoping that the franchise would be rebooted, and be far more in line with what the old cartoon was, going way back to the Generation 1 designs. Well, I'm happy to say that this film is exactly what fans have been wanting all this time, and although the trailers sold this movie as a prequel, set in the 1980s before the Michael Bay films, make no mistake, this film is absolutely a reboot. The events of this movie purposely ignores any mythology established in the Michael Bay movies, where there is no way you could slot this movie into the timeline from those movies. Bumblebee's design retains some details similar to the Bay version, but ultimately leans more into his G1 design, so in a way you can view this movie as the start of a new timeline, similar to how the J.J. Abrams Star Trek film series is a separate timeline to the show. Bumblebee is everything I've wanted from a Transformers movie, and I really can't wait to see it again. Best way I can describe it is E.T. meets Transformers. Swap E.T. out for Bumblebee, and that's what this movie is. But Travis Knight uses that formula to its full effect here, where he takes the boy and his car setup from the first Transformers movie and expands it to a whole film, where this time it's a girl in her car. Our lead, Charlie, played by Hailee Steinfeld, is so well-rounded and likable that you just want things to work out for her. She's your average 80s teenager who's faced some tragedies in the past, and now this yellow alien robot has come into her life, which seems absurd, but like E.T., Bumblebee really takes the time to blossom and develop their relationship as these two wonderful friends that just want to help each other out. There's plenty of strong comedic and heartfelt moments that are all aided by the wonderful facial animation on Bumblebee, which gets a lot of attention thanks to Travis Knight's animation background, where a lot of effort is put into Bumblebee's facial expression, and that really helps build palpable and believable chemistry between a CG character and a human character. Limiting the amount of Transformers that appear in this film has definitely helped this team in realizing the Transformers and making them look more like their cartoon counterparts, which as a result makes them far more distinguishable from each other, rather than the blur of machine parts that were in the Bayformers. This is the change that the franchise needed, and yet all it needed was to go back and look at what people loved about the 1980s cartoon. Travis Knight has packed this movie with so many references and nods to the old school cartoon and its 1986 animated film that if you're a fan, you're going to be jumping up and down with joy. The tone of the film is very different to the Michael Bay films, and that is absolutely for the best. This is a much more heartwarming and family-friendly film that treats its characters with respect and puts them at the center of all the action. This isn't Shia LaBeouf screaming with Linkin Park blaring in the background. There's a lot of effort made in making you care about Bumblebee and Charlie. From their little bonding moments about trying to hide, or Charlie's obsession with the Smiths, there's so much to love. And it's nice to not just have the same old Optimus Prime and Megatron battle. The stakes are far more controlled, with the Autobot and Decepticon war still happening just off in the distance. It's definitely important and integral to what's happening in the film, but the Bumblebee and Charlie relationship is the crux of the film, and that's what makes this movie such a joy to watch. Not gonna lie, this is the first time I've teared up watching a Transformers film since watching the old animated movie as a kid, and if you're worried that you won't see many of your favorite Transformers, then don't stress. As the trailers have hinted at, they are around. And finally, Optimus Prime gets used in just the right amount, where he's treated like he was in the cartoon, as if he's this last resort and held with the high authority that people expect. The only real downside to the movie is that with this being an E.T. inspired film, in that you have the government and military acting as some fairly cheesy villains, ultimately all being fairly one-dimensional, such as John Cena's Jack Burns, who is just this big buff military type and doesn't have a great deal else to his character. But honestly, considering the tone of the film and the light-hearted fun vibe it gives off, those elements never bothered me too much. This is Bumblebee and Charlie's film. It's about building them up as characters and as the film's heroes, and that's what really matters here. So if you're someone who's been burned by the Michael Bay Transformers movies, then fear not. This is the Transformers movie we've been waiting for, and it took an animation director to finally bring some life to the Transformers. I really hope that this tone is what the Transformers movies continue from here on out, because Travis Knight and screenwriter Christina Hodson have given us a Transformers movie that can be enjoyed by everyone and loved by Transformers fans. I absolutely cannot wait to see it again. Bumblebee gets an 8.8 out of 10 for me. Green Book comes to us from director Peter Farrelly, who is probably best known for directing Dumb and Dumber. The film tells the true story of Don Shirley and Tony Lip, two men in the 60s who couldn't have been more different, coming together and forming an incredible friendship despite the racial profiling that existed at the time. Tony, played by an incredible Viggo Mortensen, comes from an Italian family living in the Bronx, working mainly as a bouncer for different New York City nightclubs, while Don Shirley, played by the masterful Mahershala Ali, is an African-American classical musician who lives primarily on his own. The two come together when Tony is recommended to Don as a driver and bodyguard, where Tony is given a green book, which lists different places where African Americans were accepted at the time, as a means to help Don as he performs in the Deep South. Hence the title of this film. Tony starts the film having a fair deal of prejudice towards African Americans, where he throws glasses out that two black tradesmen use introduced at his house, to the disbelief of his own wife, played by the very underrated Linda Cardellini. But Tony isn't completely against working with black people, and agrees to work for Don when his finances aren't working out for him. And so over the course of the movie, we watch these two men come together, one from a very wealthy but lonely background that despite all his achievements doesn't have access to basic things, the other from a poor but welcoming background with a big family where he is accepted without question. Both men have their own prejudices against each other and are completely polar opposites, where Tony is very outspoken but uneducated, much to Don's distaste, while Don is intelligent and chooses his words very carefully, which Tony finds pretentious. But over time, these men start to accept their differences, and we watch them change as they begin to stand up for each other and have respect for themselves. The movie wants you to know that anyone can change with enough courage, and wants audiences to feel like they can accept each other despite their backgrounds, which is as ever prevalent now as it was back then. But the movie is never overtly heavy-handed with its social commentary, because the characters of Tony and Don are always at the forefront of the movie. Everything is a part of what they experience, and only shows scenarios from their point of view, which is how I've always felt movies with hot-button issues should handle things. Characters and story first, social commentary second, not the other way around. If social commentary comes first, then you just come across as preachy and ignorant of your own characters. Thankfully, the performances in the movie are what draw you into thinking about these issues. Hailee and Mortensen have such an incredible chemistry with a great back and forth dynamic, where they are just so at ease and natural with each other. We just feel a great warmth with their friendship. I have to say, this is one of the most heartwarming and wholesome films I've seen all year. Despite the racial and social issues presented in the movie, Peter Farrelly maintains that he wants to leave you with hope that people can change, and manages to balance the drama and comedy sides, where you end up leaving the film feeling as though you can have faith in humanity to change for the better. Sure, it might not make Green Book the most powerful film of the year, but it doesn't have to be the movie that makes you depressed or angry at the world, which is how a lot of these dramas can make you feel. This movie wants you to accept others and embrace change for the better, and as a result, you will leave this film feeling incredibly moved and more aware of society, all thanks to a movie that teaches friendship and understanding is a far greater motivator than straight up hate or anger. See Green Book. I adored it, and I think it is absolutely one of the best films of 2018. Green Book gets a 9.3 out of 10 from me. Guys, I hope you like these reviews. If you want to see more reviews just like these, be sure to stay right here for your mono fix. Bye guys.